What's up, guys? Welcome back to Right Side. Today, I want to talk about compassion in politics. Compassion is a word commonly used by both sides of the political spectrum. Republicans often accuse Democrats of having a bleeding heart, while Democrats criticize Republicans for lacking compassion altogether. There's no doubt that in life, we all want to have compassion for one another. The only question is, what forms should we have that manifest, and whether politics is the right place to do it. Now, I think a lot of us wouldn't think too hard about helping out a neighbor in need, a family member who reaches out for a request, or is simply down on their luck. It's a basic human instinct to want to help those in need. The issue regarding compassion in politics revolves around the effect of state power. Compassion from the state does not look the same way as compassion from your grandmother. In politics, compassion is a euphemism for state power. Compassion in politics is obviously a weapon. The sad part is that too many people take advantage of compassion to make themselves look good. This is the art of virtue signaling. I don't think it's too controversial to say that compassion is a mainly left-wing issue. The left weaponizes compassion in ways that the right simply does not, whether it be for the homeless, the poor, minorities, or another underprivileged segment of society. Compassion is often a policy ideal on the part of the left. I don't believe that left-wing voters or liberals and the main populace approach politics from a malicious standpoint. However, those people aren't the types of people who tend to get into power. Let's face it, politicians, for the most part, are not like the general population. It takes a certain kind of person to succeed and grow in politics. To climb the ranks, 90% of politics is communicating and marketing, and the other 10% is actual policy. Luckily for Democrats, compassion is a very well-received word in politics. People hear the word compassion and instantly want to be seen as on that side. No one wants to be seen as an uncompassionate person or framed that way, which is why they are often pigeonholed and forced into awkward positions. Compassion is a slippery slope of who to help, how much to help them, and how much you correct for certain injustices. I would never argue that injustices don't exist, or that certain individuals don't need compassion, which is not in and of itself an inherently bad thing. My issue with compassion in politics surrounds the general purpose of the state. Because we trust the state to do such specific things, it tends to give the state the power to abuse certain privileges with which we decide to trust it with. Humans tend to have very short-term memories. The generation that was born from the generation that saw war will not understand the horrors of war like their parents did. This is why general wars happen every 80 years or so, as the last generation who saw the horrors of war themselves die out. The remaining population who has never seen the horrors of war become desensitized to it, and thus don't think it's that big of an issue. This desensitivity to war prompts this generation of people to become more comfortable with the idea of going to war. Thus, this cycle repeats. The inexperienced generations go to war and are reminded of the cruelty of human nature and how cruel humans can be to one another. But then they will fight tooth and nail so that their kids don't have to see those same horrors. They do that by protecting them, which is actually exactly the opposite of what the kids need. Lessons are only as valuable as they are taught, and ideas are only as good as they are communicated. If you've ever needed an example of the phrase, "those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it," it is the desensitivity to war from generations that have never seen it themselves. This is why, generally, civilizations and governments over time drift to the left. They forget what government tyranny may have looked like and thus become comfortable with giving the state the absurd power that they feel the state ought to have to settle the score of certain social injustices. Some easy examples are reparations, welfare, or social security, which are another way for the government to buy and keep your vote. It is in the best interests of welfare and social security recipients to keep voting for those who will keep those programs in place. This is why these programs were instituted as quickly as possible, and exactly why they are so hard to get rid of. Now, I believe that the welfare state should be as decentralized as possible, and I don't think that retirement savings is a legitimate form of government. While I believe that the welfare state and social security both have large and prominent stakes in the topic of compassion in politics, they both deserve their own separate time. Whether it be reparations, welfare, or social security, the term compassion should be repulsive when used in political conversation. The word compassion should be treated like the dog whistle for state expansion that it is. The hard part is that the left has successfully positioned society to a place where they can weaponize the word compassion against their political opponents. If you don't support the minimum wage, you don't have compassion for the everyday worker. If you don't support open borders, you don't have compassion for those seeking a better life. If you don't support banning guns, well, you don't have compassion for the kids who were cruelly murdered in school shootings. The word compassion from the left is nothing but emotional blackmail. This is, of course, one of the reasons why the left is so successful among the youth. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed young voters want to solve all the world's problems. They hear the word compassionate and their eyes light up. I believe that the majority of this voting segment legitimately feels like it is compassionate, and they are doing it out of the kindness of their own heart. I think that as they get older, they tend to favor compassionate politics for their own survival. If they stray from those policies, they'll see themselves being attacked from their own side as uncompassionate and oppressive. To put it simply, young people don't like the unfairness of the world and believe that the state should solve it or at least level the playing field. But we should be careful to not allow the state to play around with the settings and act as a social engineer. Humans are not robots to be tweaked and changed here and there. We are not a series of lines of code that can be deleted and rewritten according to society's ills at the moment in time. Now, I believe compassion is appropriate at as localized a level as possible. We should be face to face with the people whom we seek to be compassionate towards. Much like insulting someone over the internet, things are much easier to do or not to do when you're not directly in front of the person. Calling someone fat or stupid over the internet has no immediate physical consequences. Inhibitions are relatively low. It's the same thing as voting for a policy for some random social worker to go out into the field and help the disenfranchised. The fact of the matter is that people naturally tend to be greedy, selfish, and focused on their own self-interest. So when you try to legislate compassion like how the state of California tends to try and do, it doesn't end up very effective. If you think about it, if you give someone a paid salary to fix or get rid of a certain thing like homelessness, the last thing that person really wants to do is, well, cure homelessness. Because if they did the job that they were appointed to do, well, they'd be out of a job. The same thing with the welfare state. If the welfare state got people out of poverty, well, then there wouldn't be any poverty for the welfare state to exist for. So therefore, the welfare state is incentivized to keep people in a constant cycle of poverty, always giving people enough to keep their heads above water, but not swim to shore. Like an abuser who pays for their victim's way of life, just enough for them to always have to come back asking for more, making sure that they are dependent solely on them and unable to do for themselves, keeping that constant control over them. I know we all want to do nice things for people because we're nice people, but the state is not a good way to do it. Say what you want about nonprofits or corporations and such, but neither nonprofits nor corporations have the power of the government gun. Compassion allows the state to grow its influence over certain segments of the population. Right now, the federal government has a very strong grip on Social Security and welfare recipients, voting blocks that they won't ever have to worry about losing. It's political manipulation at its very core. It's not compassionate to strip the population of firearms or invade the country with migrants who won't assimilate. Likewise, not wanting the state to perpetuate poverty or homelessness isn't uncompassionate. The right's distrust of government leads it down a more libertarian streak. Now, while there are certain problems with libertarianism, the distrust of the state in some capacities is not. While the state does serve a purpose, we should be acutely aware of the power that we delegate to the state. Are we sure we want them to have power over these certain demographics historically? Once you surrender or delegate certain powers to the state, they don't give them back. Federal government has very little, if any, accountability, whereas state and local governments have much more accountability. You are infinitely more likely to know your town representative personally than you are the president or governor of your state. A decentralized system allows citizens to have a closer influence and eye on the social programs that they wish their locality and local government to implement. At the end of the day, compassion should be a private action, not a public one. This should be done through volunteer work. Charity is a much better way to effectuate change than a federal budget. Charity is decentralized at its core. People are much more likely to pay close attention to the things that they donate to. Many people don't have much interest in what the state pays or spends money on because, quite frankly, they don't have a choice in giving the state money. If you don't pay your taxes, you go to jail. Forced compassion is no compassion at all. The very root of compassion comes from voluntary giving. You don't have to do something, but you choose to do it anyway. A lot of people who are in a position to warrant said compassion are not always those who are simply down on their luck. I'm sorry if this offends you, but I'm going to say it anyway. People, for the most part, are in their current situation because they put themselves there. Not everyone is this model victim of society. Now, I can hear many people in the comment section questioning whether I'd even want to help the less fortunate to begin with. My answer is simple. I hope everyone does well. Now, I'm not so naive as to think that everyone wants what I want. In the end, compassion in politics has become more of a tool for expanding state power than a genuine attempt to help others. While the idea of helping those in need resonates within all of us on a personal level, when it's legislated, it often leads to inefficiency, dependency, and exploitation. True compassion is voluntary, localized, and direct, not coerced or handed down from a government that uses it to manipulate voters and grow its influence. The state's role should be limited, allowing charity and personal responsibility to lead. Only then can we ensure that compassion remains what it should be, an act of kindness, not a political weapon. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you hit the like button. If you'd like to support and help the channel grow, please subscribe and ring the bell as they update it with all my uploads. Finally, whether you agree or disagree, leave your thoughts in the comment section below. I look forward to engaging with you guys in respectful and thoughtful discussions. With that said, I'll see you guys in the next video. See ya.